gonna start a caucus.
Yeah. We have a quorum. 3 people.
Good morning. I call to order the December 2022 meeting of the Mission Fulfillment Committee at the University of Minnesota Board of Regents. Thank you for those who are joining us via live stream video and Zoom and those attending here in the boardroom. And a special welcome to our student representatives today, Hal Johnson from the Morris campus and Riley Tuff from the Duluth campus. I hope you got down here well before the snow was flying. Thank you both for being here. And now we have a full agenda. We'll divide it up in 2 pieces and start with the policy, commercialization of intellectual property rights. That's an action item for today. And we are joined by Vice President for Research Shashank Priya and Rick Hipsch, Executive Director of Technology Commercialization. And Provost Croson, would you like to make some opening comments?
Thank you, Chair Davenport and members of the committee. Vice President Priya and Director Hipsch returned today to seek your approval for the revisions to the Board of Regents policy, commercialization of intellectual property rights, that they presented in October. There are no changes to the proposed revisions since that presentation, but if you have any remaining questions, I know our presenters will be happy to answer them.
Thank you. And before we turn to discussion or questions, is there a motion to recommend adoption of the proposed amendment to the Board of Regents policy, commercialization of intellectual property rights?
So moved.
Second? Thank you. Any discussion? All right, we've seen this before, so there being no further discussion. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, say no. The motion is approved. Thank you. So we'll keep you up here, I think. Because item 2, and I hope you had a chance to review the materials and really be, as we get engaged in this conversation, I hope we're recognizing and help others to recognize the tremendous contribution and impact our university does have, not only for Minnesota citizens, but for the broader global community. So our second item is the annual report on the status of university research and commercialization of technology. And here to walk us through the report is again Vice President for Research Priya. And President Gable, would you like to introduce our topic?
Yes, thank you, Chair Davenport, Vice Chair Johnson, and members of the committee. So each year, as you know, the Vice President for Research provides the annual report on the status of the university research and commercialization of technology to the board, which is required by board policy. But it's a pleasure to hear this report today because it summarizes our research metrics for the past year and documents tremendous trends in research productivity, in scholarship, in the commercialization of technology, as well as benchmarking our performance and ranking amongst our peers. Our fiscal year 2022 year represents another amazing step in our upward trajectory as one of the nation's top research universities. With over $1 billion in research expenditures for the second time in our history, a record 22 startups putting us on pace to meet our MPACT 2025 goals, a record 241 patents, bringing us to number 16 globally for universities granting U.S. utility patents. We also have the pleasure of welcoming our new Vice President for Research, Dr. Shashank Priya, in September, who has obviously hit the ground running, as you will hear in a moment. And he is relying on MPACT 2025 as his guide so that he and his team can align our focus and resources around the plan's measures and metrics while centering into our metro headquarters economy and vibrant corporate ecosystem with an aim to elevate and impact the state, the nation, and beyond. So with that, Madam Chair, I would like to turn it over to Dr. Priya.
Very good. Thank you. Please.
Thank you very much, Chair Davenport, Vice Chair Johnson, and members of the board. Thank you, President Gable, for the great introduction, and Provost Croson. I'm very pleased to be with you here today to present our annual report on the state of the research enterprise of 2022. I want to start off with an acronym that's often used by national security leaders. It's called BLUF, Bottom Line Upfront. So I'm going to do that with you here today. As this slide shows to you, that university's research enterprise remains strong and growing. U remains the part of billion-dollar research club of 24 US research universities. We are among the top 10 US public universities according to one of the ranking schemes, Shanghai Index. And we can boast 12 fields of study among the top 25 disciplines globally by that same organization. According to the most commonly used metric for US research universities, we rank among the top 15 US public universities. We are nationally and globally recognized for technology commercialization and innovation, and as I will show you in several different metrics that rank us among the top in our peers. Throughout my talk, I will be mentioning diverse and meaningful and impactful projects across our University of Minnesota system. And at the end, I will summarize by some new initiatives that will allow us to continue to prosper in our research trajectory. So let's start by measuring our progress toward MPACT 2025 research goal. Our office works closely with other parts of human leadership to track and understand indicators and goals outlined in our system-wide strategic plan. We are accountable for a number of specific measures. And as I move quickly through this section, you will see a number of green lights and only a couple of yellow lights. I'm going to go over through these metrics quickly, but Provost Croson will discuss tomorrow these metrics in her accountability report. Under Action 2.1 on the slide, where we seek to grow overall research funding, we are up 20% in awards compared to baseline. Using another retrospective measure, which is called HERD survey, R&D ranking, measuring the research expenditures, we are down number 14 in US publics, which I will explore with you later. Under Action 2.2, where we seek to enhance opportunities for our businesses and startups, corporate partnerships, and technology commercialization, we are up. Our annual startup creation is strong, and as strong as our other business metrics, which I will explore with you later. Under Action 2.3, we seek to increase state-sponsored research awards. Based on a rolling 5-year total, we are up compared to the baseline. Under Action 2.3 is the Shanghai ARWU Global Ranking, which I mentioned earlier, and we are down compared to the baseline from 40th to 44th. But in the same ranking, we are 10th among the public institutions. Based both of these actions on this slide, 3.1 and 3.2, have goals which measure year-over-year increases in the area of invention disclosures in 2 sectors of our economy. These disclosures are the first step in protecting our inventions and patents. As you will see later, the total number of invention disclosures tracked in our technology commercialization section, we are up in both these metrics. Next, I'll switching gears to talk about the state of the research enterprise for fiscal year 2022. I'll begin with awards information and the external sponsored research funding that our researchers competed for and won in FY 2022. Just as a reminder, FY 2022 means July 1, 2021 to June 30, 2022. So it doesn't cover the whole year of 2022. And awards are normally multi-year awards, so the numbers we show here are just for this duration, not for the all duration of the award. In FY 2022, our researchers received about $1.05 billion in external research funding. This was the second largest sponsored award total in our history. As has typically been the case, around 60% of award funding came from direct federal sources. And as you will see in your docket materials, and I will touch upon in a moment, the Department of Defense and other associated research agencies still remain an area and opportunity, a significant growth opportunity for us. This wheel is ordered clockwise according to the funding amounts. So this, after NIH, state and local agencies are the second largest slice here. So what do we do with this money? As an example, one of the ways our researchers make impact is by directly working on problems that impact our society. The Trust Fund, Environmental and Natural Resources Trust Fund, supports research that is highly specialized and highly relevant to our state, such as supporting studies on invasive terrestrial pests and plants. You researchers very closely work with state and local officials and help them to disseminate useful information to our citizens, who I am learning really value their natural environment. In this slide, we see the other side of previous wheel chart that I showed you earlier on external funding. And here the breakdown is with respect to the units in the UMN system in our campuses. You can see that medical school, School of Public Health, academic and clinical affairs, the colleges of dentistry, nursing, and pharmacy, and VetMed comprise more than half of our sponsored award. A note about the medical school, they are on a different calendar, which I mentioned earlier, than the universities. They are on federal calendar, which basically starts on October 1 and runs until September 30 of the following year. So the numbers reflected here are not the complete number, but Dr. Tolar and his staff have informed me that they are having one of the best years in the medical school in the past decade. You can also see here campuses beyond the Twin Cities listed in bold and highlighted on this wheel, which represents our entire UMN system. And our Duluth campus, who we are going to hear later, are up significantly, 137%. Other units, colleges in Twin Cities that saw significant increases include CFANS, liberal arts, and pharmacy. I actually had the chance to visit Duluth campus recently along with my associate vice president Karcher, and thanks to Chancellor McMillan for graciously hosting our visit. Professor Arshia Khan at Duluth campus, she's doing remarkable and amazing work in the area of robots that have ability to express emotional, physical, and cognitive support for our elderly population. She's doing this research in partnership with Monarch Healthcare, a large company that provides homes and services to older people. And in my discussions with her, we had the chance to engage on ways we can strengthen her research and also her educational plan. In coming months, we will be engaging her on creating a unique educational and research center. I'm very interested in expanding this type of research opportunities for all of our campuses and believe that we can do through collaborations such as between IONE and Duluth or in CBS and Morris, many more examples in the years to come. So what I've presented thus far has been about last year's award. Now I will switch to a discussion of our research enterprise advancement year over year. On this slide, we are showing research awards for past 10 years. Overall, you will see a very positive growth trajectory in our externally sponsored funding. Last year, some of you may recall, we received a very substantial $152 million grant for COVID-19 trials from Leidos Corporation. That award originated from NIH, but was a pass-through through Leidos. That one year-over-year difference somewhat obscures this overall growth trajectory. I think what's most remarkable on this slide is the sustained growth over the last 2 years, that in FY 2022, we are 20% up compared to FY 20, putting the U over the $1 billion mark for 2 consecutive years. This growth is in line with the goals of our MPACT 2025 plan. And what is another remarkable data which we gathered in the last year is the high dollar awards have grown by 39% over the last 5 years. And high dollar award correspond to awards with more than $1 million. As an aside, I want to take an opportunity on this slide just to mention that our dollars have grown very significantly, but the research support services have not kept pace with this. So in the years to come, we will be reaching out and trying to allocate support for our research infrastructure, our software systems, our facilities, so that we can continue to provide the quality services for which U is known for. On this next slide is a comparison of 2 important metrics. I just went over the external research award funding, which represents the total amount of funding that researchers won with the agencies in the year. Often, these awards are for multiple years. And now I will turn over to research expenditures or R&D expenditures and do the comparison with our peers in the metrics corresponding to the amount to spend on the research in a given particular year. On this slide is a very popular and very respectable ranking called NSF HERD ranking that tracks overall expenditure levels and across the multiple institutions. You can see here that UMN Twin Cities is ranked number 14 among US publics in FY21, the latest data available. There are two exceptions here, University of Texas, MD Anderson Cancer Center, and also the universities listed here, the Texas A&M Center. You can see here that UMN Twin Cities NSF HERD ranking has not kept pace as compared to last time, but this factor is confounded by two very important details. The first one, many of our peers, which is Ohio State University and Maryland, have changed the way in which they report the data. And that reporting included the hospital systems that they have or the more number of campuses they have. And that pushed them higher into this ranking. The second very important factor is that in FY21 and 22, the university took a very cautious approach of opening and closing the lab due to the COVID impact. And I think that delayed the expenditures that our researchers were able to realize. And I think these numbers will be reflected in the next year that we will have significant advancement. On this next slide, I want to go up and really show you how closely we are grouped together when it comes to the rankings. If you take the number 9 ranked Texas A&M and the number 14th ranked UMN, they are separated by less than $75 million. So one way we can think about that we can put our efforts in trying to raise $75 million, which is not a grand challenge for us. But I would like to point out to the board that this small differential should not be our focus. Rather, our focus should be to continue to implement this long-term vision that we have, and that will lead to a very improved and sustainable standing. Next is I want to shift attention to the global ranking system, where we are ranked in the top 10 among US publics, 10th in fact. This is the academic ranking of world universities, ARWU, sometimes also called Shanghai Index. This index uses many other metrics beyond the research expenditures, such as winning the Nobel Prizes or other major awards, academic citations. Most importantly, it reflects the quality of research that is being done at the university. And as you can see on the same slide, which also compares the peers that I was showing you before, UMN ranks much higher. Number 44 compares to many of our peers. Next is, on this slide, further emphasis on the quality of research. And as I pointed out to you earlier, that we are ranked in top 12 disciplines among the 25 different disciplines globally. We are ranked number 14th in biotechnology on the previous slide. And that actually corresponds to a big strength that we have in order to meet the initiatives that government is putting forward. There are a couple of examples I would like to quickly skip through that emphasize further the quality of research. One of them being Sarah Hobby in our College of Biological Sciences, also a member of National Academy of Sciences. She's leading a research as a part of a big network called this Long-Term Ecological Research LTR program in the Minneapolis-St. Paul area, which tries to understand and addresses environmental stressors on the social disparities in the urban nature. It's a big NSF award for 6 years for $7.1 million with direct impact on our society and our community. On the next slide is an example from our Morris campus, which is becoming a leader in terms of renewable energy system, both on generation and also the storage. And in the following years, we hope to partner with them to continue to strengthen their trajectory and become a hub for renewable systems. Next, I want to turn attention to a very important part of our office, which is engaged in technology commercialization and corporate engagement. Here we have some indicators that our office uses in order to judge the performance. Particularly notable are the record number of startup companies that we have created and the record number of patents issued to our inventors. You can also see on this slide that we have increased the number of patents filing and it has rebounded from the COVID years from 126 to 156 in last year. Drilling down further in this startup ecosystem, we created 22 startups in FY22, which sets up very nicely for 25 startups in FY25, which is the Impact 2025 goal. And the second point to emphasize on this slide is the diversity of our startup in this pie chart. They are across many different sectors, and this shows the strength that we are addressing many different disciplines at the same time. TechCom has received a lot of praise all over nationally and internationally. We rank very highly among many prestigious rankings. The only thing I would like to mention on this slide is that we piloted a new program called Early Innovation Fund, which has gained a lot of traction among our researchers and is already starting to make an impact on their ability to commercialize technology. As an example, it's Bob Tranquillo in our department of bioengineering. He received the award from Department of Defense to develop bioengineered blood vessels. And recently, actually, I had the chance to meet Bob Tranquillo in his office to learn about this technology. And he founded a company called Vascudyne a few years ago, which has caught significant attention of venture capital world. Vascudyne is creating vascular grafts that can go along with pediatric patients with great promise to heal the congenital heart problems in kids. The other area I would like to emphasize to the board is Corporate Engagement Center, which serves as a point of contact for our industry partner. This past year, the center continued to manage a portfolio of about 60, 70 large companies, including all of Minnesota's Fortune 500 companies. And last year, we also added a new function to our CEC, which is place-based partnerships, which is about co-locating and shared use of facilities between the companies and the university researchers. CEC, there are two examples which we would like to highlight. There are many examples I would have presented if there was enough time. One of them is the Future of Advanced Agricultural Research in Minnesota, called FARM project, which is being planned to be started in Mower County near Austin. As you know, the university hopes to secure capital project support from the state of Minnesota, as well as a variety of other public and private sources, including a pledged cornerstone commitment of $60 million from Hormel Foundation. And we hope to make a very significant advancement in precision animal and plant agriculture. The other example I would like to point out is the Cisco Systems, which has 18 projects going on with more than 30 faculty and researchers. And on this slide is an example of a project where our researchers are developing a chatbot to reduce a bias in video meetings. So that was all the summary of things that have happened in the fiscal year 2022. And the question we now are asking is, what can we do in order to position us very strongly for the future? How can we continue to rise in our rankings and in our funding? So in the next few slides, I will describe to you the initiatives that we are planning, along with many of the leaders present in this room and around the university, and I don't have time to name them all, but I especially want to thank VP Tolar, Provost Croson, SVP France, and UMF President Smil Coffer, and President Gable for giving a lot of insights in trying to develop these initiatives. The first I would like to highlight is an area of opportunity for us, national security. As you can see on this slide, we are very strong in our funding from HHS or NSF, but we are a little bit on the downside when it comes to the DoD funding. And so we are developing strategies on how we can gain further support from various branches of DoD. And on this next slide is a word cloud, which actually summarizes the disciplinary distribution of DoD funding. And it's very obvious from this slide that there are certain disciplines, depending upon the size of alphabets, that receive a significant of DoD funding, but there are many others which receive DoD funding, which could be enhanced by providing the proper networking and opportunities to engage in proposal writing with the right kind of tools and right kind of connections. So that's what we are going to emphasize in the coming year. There's another initiative that I would like to point out to the board called International Institute of Biosensing, which we formed and launched in this year, and it's going to start to make tremendous impact on our ability to engage with the researchers both nationally and internationally. We're going to create a partnership with over 50 universities in 14 countries to become a hub for anything related to biosensing in the world. And this initiative is going to drive significantly our publications, our funding, and our impact on society in many different ways. There's another initiative that we are launching and will be implemented in the spring of 2023, and hopefully many of you will have chance to participate in this event called 2030 Workshop. This workshop is about asking the question, where in 2030 and beyond will the research be? What are the topics in 2030 and beyond that are going to dominate our conversation? And once we can identify those topics, we're going to make significant investment in those areas with our UMN talented faculty and researchers and drive pioneering research to position ourselves to be leaders in those areas when the time comes. On the next slide is many other initiatives that we are planning, and we don't have time to run down through all these initiatives, but one of them I would like to highlight is upgrading our infrastructure. And thanks to the support from many leaders in this room, we are starting to make significant investment in some areas, and as a function of time, we will continue this process so that we have cutting-edge tools, cutting-edge equipments, and the infrastructure to drive this process of innovation across our system. Our plans for upcoming year is a summary of many different things that we are planning to do, including strengthening the corporate engagement network, working across national and international agencies to strengthen our funding in the security and other areas. But the one I would like to really gain your attention and drive home is that we are partnering with many of the Minnesota state agencies to increase our social and economic impact in state of Minnesota. And going forward, this will be our focus that we show in our coming years, our ability to make transformations in many different sectors of society. So I'll end my presentation by welcoming questions and comments from you. But I'm very much interested in seeking your perspective on these two questions, and hopefully we can collectively engage in discussion on these two questions and drive home some ways that will be transformative for our system. I really want to thank you for your attention, giving me a chance to come here and present to you. And in summary, our state of research enterprise remains strong and progressive, and we are leading the world in many different disciplines, and we will continue to do so in the coming years. So thank you very much.
And thank you, Vice President Priya, for that excellent presentation. And while we look to questions, I have one, but I want to say that you did a nice job in presenting where we've been, a snapshot of today, but to recognize that the job's not done as we continue to move forward. And I want to congratulate you and your team and the entire university for the tremendous work to date. When you think of the outlook, the 2030 workshop and such, are you optimistic or are you worried about the availability of funding at, say, the federal level or through corporate America?
Yeah, that's a very good question, Regent Davenport. So I want to answer in two ways. Fortunately, the current federal government has allocated significant more funding at the federal level. And that allows us to participate in many new initiatives. As an example would be CHIPS Act, which President Biden proposed, and the new initiative called Biotechnology and Biomanufacturing Initiative. And we at the university are preparing ourselves to, again, participate in these two initiatives in a very strong manner. And one of the reasons we can participate very strongly is the collection of companies around us that provides us very good strength in taking technology from basic science to the higher TRL level. And I think this ability is very attractive for what our government is trying to achieve. So I think collectively, with our group of companies, we will be very well positioned given the increase in the federal funding that we are seeing.
Great, that's good. Regent Hicks.
Thank you, Chair. First of all, I just want to say great presentation. This is the kind of stuff that really excites me about higher education and about land-grant institutions. And this is the stuff that's going to get us to the future. And if you look at the past, this is what got us where we are, right? And so if you go back to slide number 15 on the just like the rankings, I'd just like to know what the makeup of the rankings are. Can we go back to slide 15? Is that possible?
Yeah, sure. No. Yep.
Right there. So when I look at our ranking, and I know part of it is government sponsored, or part of it is private industry. I think you broke that out. But when I look at San Francisco, let's say, are they having a higher percentage of private or higher, what's their percentage breakout? And that kind of will tell us where our opportunity is. Are we working well with our companies, or could we be getting more money out of our local companies to do research, or should we be going after more government or whatever? So is our percentage similar to the other ones? Put it that way.
Yeah, so thank Regent Hipsch. I'll have to look at their breakout to answer that question more carefully. But I want to take you to this slide I was talking about, the breakdown in terms of the distribution of funding across different federal agencies. So for example, on this chart is DOD, Health Services, and NSF. And the UC San Francisco and I mentioned the Anderson School in the Texas are very heavy on the health sciences, medical side. I don't know the fraction, but they're very heavy on that medical side of things. But I think what we are strategizing is, as I pointed out, our medical school and many other biological sciences at the UMN, they continue to drive and strive that funding level. We're very strong there. We're very good in NSF, and that continues to increase at a good pace. So the national security, which has on this slide shown some of our peers, such as Georgia Tech or Maryland, they have significant higher funding in that area. And I think this is where, with some of the new initiatives we are planning, could double or triple our efforts in that area to catch up. And that will position us very higher in that ranking. But the vision we have is not to rush and implement a strategy. The vision we have is to create a really strong foundation such that it's a very broader participation of our community. And it's not one or few awards that drive that ranking. It will be a much broader community participation, so many awards that will drive our standing. It will be a much solid footing as we go forward.
Regent Tips.
No follow-up. Thank you. Great answer.
Thank you.
Next, we'll have Regents Farnsworth and Swigum and Powell. Regent Farnsworth. Oh, I'm sorry. I read the wrong name. Regent Mayron. J.D. James.
James Janey. Yeah.
Thank you for your presentation and for the very detailed set of materials you provided to us. My question has to do with, when I read through the materials and looking at materials that start at about page 33 of our materials, we've got a variety of different programs, awards, centers. I'm struck with the breadth of our efforts in a variety of different aspects. And we've got the Discovery Launchpad, the new Early Innovation Fund, Corporate Engagement Center, different advancement programs, different awards. And my question is would there be any benefit from more centralization, reducing some of the number of programs, focus? Is there an issue of overlap? Because my impression when I read the materials is we've got a lot going in a variety of different directions. And is this the best use of your department's funds in terms of where we go in the future? Or would it benefit from an analysis of, again, whether there's overlap or there should be greater centralization?
Yeah, so Chair Davenport, Regent Mayron. So very good question, actually. This is something we discuss in our office quite a bit on the strategic importance of different awards. So one thing I would like to point out, there are 12 plus large federal agencies that provide funding. And they're all different mission oriented, they have different vision. So when we think about our own initiatives, we actually try to match with what the agencies are asking for and what their strategic plan is as a function of time so that we can position our researchers to be very competitive in those plans. There's also a very broad set of industrial sector, like health sector or IT sector or transportation or telecom and so on. So again, the emphasis is very different across different industry sectors. So when we create an initiative, we also try to align our focus such that we are very competitive across this many different bandwidth. So each program that we created has emerged as a function of necessity in order to position our researchers to be very competitive across it. And so along with OVPR, the colleges also have their own initiatives and focus areas. And I think going forward, thanks to Provost Croson and her leadership and the many deans in our colleges, we are really trying to converge and align our emphasis and also position ourselves as an example. Provost Croson led recently something called Data Science Initiative, which we are teaming together all across the system and trying to launch this initiative. So as a function of time, you will see that there's a more cohesive and coherent approach in targeting certain type of either industry sector or a type of federal agency.
Regent Maylin?
No follow-up. Thank you.
Thank you. Regent Sviggum?
Madam Chair, thank you. VP Para, you're doing an outstanding job, and our research enterprise is awesome, without question. But I do have a question of comparison, if I could. As we look at our reaching the goals of Impact 2025 and our action items, I noticed as we look through the action items, sometimes you use the baseline of 2019, sometimes you use the baseline of 2020, sometimes of 2021. Now, most of us are smart enough to know that depending upon what baseline you use, you can make ourselves look better than we really are or not as good as we really are. Tuition, for instance, if we use the baseline of 2021, when we had a 0% tuition increase, last year's at 3.5 looks pretty bad.
Yeah.
But if we use the baseline of the 2000s, when it was 8, 9, 10%, last year's looked pretty good. So tell me why you use different baselines in the comparison. Is it only to maybe make us look better than we are, or was there a reason for choosing 2019 in one case, one action item, and 2021 in another? You know where I'm going. So
Yeah, no, I completely understand. So Chair
VP Priya.
Davenport and Regent Sviggum, I'll actually ask Provost Croson to explain to you, because I think these were embedded in the Impact 2025 plan. So we are using that was described in the baselines, but I'll pass it on to you.
Yeah, Chair Davenport, Regent Sviggum, my understanding is that when those metrics were developed, there was sort of a snapshot taken at a particular time. For some of those, we were talking about the fiscal year 2019, which is different than the fiscal year 2020. And so exactly when those numbers were kind of set is a little bit different, whether it's when the metric was calculated or what year it was attributed to and that kind of thing. But we can certainly go back and look through, I think, all of the metrics and make sure they're appropriately baselined.
Definitely, it's a good question. Thank you.
And Regent Sviggum?
thank you, Madam Chair.
Now, there's the calendar year, the fiscal year, July, and then the feds, if they do something, and we're lucky, it's October. So, yeah, there's a lot of moving numbers in there. Regent Powell?
Thank you, Chair Davenport, and thank you for the, Vice President Priya, thank you for the excellent presentation. I know you're still relatively new here, lots of progress, short period of time. By the way, this weather we're having today, I know you're very rare.
Thank you.
So a couple of, I guess, maybe suggestions. And the first one is, I think, you know, the 1.5 billion goal, very exciting, very ambitious, and, you know, and I think, you know, very attainable. And with that goal in mind, I really appreciate sort of the strategic context that you're beginning to give us, and just as an example, what looks like a significant opportunity within DoD. I think it would be great at a future meeting if you elaborated on that 1.5 billion and really sort of gave us the framework for a lot has to happen, you know, for us to get there. And so if you can I know you're thinking about this all the time. You can give us a more detailed framework on how you're going to prioritize it. This in a way builds on Regent Mayron's question, where are the opportunities in detail, and how are we going to, what resources do we need to really get there and sort of bring that to life? So I think that would be really helpful. And then in the question that you raise on, sort of how do we, I think, promote sort of the entrepreneurial development, I think another thing that might help the board is a little bit of benchmarking with institutions that have been really good at this. I mean, so I don't know, Stanford, MIT, you know who they are. And so I think that maybe to the degree that you could provide us with some framing, on that, and the kinds of things that appear to be really useful for institutions that want to advance in this area, which we clearly do, and we're good at it. I mean, I'm not an expert on this, and so maybe you can help us with your own knowledge and research. Here are the things that seem to work and that you're going to want to put resources into. And then, so there's a couple of thoughts. And then the last one, just a specific question. The International Institute for Biosensing, which is this, it's a huge, exciting. Can you tell us maybe a bit about how that came about, why it's centered here, what your ambitions are for that program?
Yep. So first of all, Chair Davenport and Regent Powell, so just thanks for the comment. My colleague is taking the notes, and we'll follow up on the first two comments to explain the details, both for our strategies to increase our funding by 2030, and 2030 is the year we are aiming for to get there. And that's what I was talking about, long-term vision, just lay down this pathway so that we arrive there. But when we arrive there, we have a very strong footing, a solid standing. So coming to the question on IIB, so over the past several years, we have been engaged with our colleagues in DC and State Department, and there was a commission called Joint Commission on Materials. And this commission was trying to address the question of how do we create a cohesive group of people who can ensure clean air, clean water, resistant to infectious diseases, soil health. And these are like global problems. Every country would like to have clean air, clean water. And we can't be saying that one country could have this, but because we all travel internationally and we know what happens in one part of the world travels to the other part of the world very, very fast and very rapidly. So the goal of this whole exercise in DC and industry who participated in this was, let's bring together researchers with the same type of thinking who are all working in this area to form a very unified group. And this unified group will share knowledge, share infrastructure, share the resources, and hopefully that will rapidly accelerate the progress in this area. There are over 1,600 plus pathogens that we have to monitor in order to ensure the safety of our infrastructure system. And so with that vision, we started to pull together the groups who have published very extensively in this area, are known for their infrastructure, are very reputed in the professional societies which participate in this area. And we started to reach out to them to engage them in this conversation. And they all felt very excited about having this kind of group. So at UMN, this year, we formed this institute. And thanks to my colleagues in Italy, Australia, and Germany who are leading people in this area, and they supported our interest to lead this effort at UMN and headquarter the institute at the UMN. So as a part of our effort, we are providing seed funding to UMN researchers in order to hire PhD students, and we will be funding 5 PhD students in this fiscal year to work in this area. But my other universities who are participating here, they will also be doing the same program. So hopefully they will have 1 or plus PhD students. And by fall 2023, I'm hoping there are 50 plus PhD students across the whole world working in this area, connected to each other. And they do Zoom calls, they communicate on the social media sites and so on, and start to engage in doing a very collaborative research. And hopefully that will show the results in the following year that we are rapidly solving the problems and using those outcomes to position ourselves in funding and other spaces.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for that question, and the response, I think, demonstrates the untold story of what's going on here at the University of Minnesota. Regent Verhalen.
Thanks, Regent Davenport. Vice President Priya, I'm going to key off something Regent Powell just mentioned, which is, understanding what other institutions are doing, but, a really important part of MPAC 2025 is around those new businesses and startups, commercialization of technology, new partnerships. And I think it's helpful, at least for me, to understand and ensure that what we are doing as an institution, so the dollars in the door is fabulous and these numbers speak for themselves. But as an institution, are we keeping up with the expectations of researchers in the higher education fields who are working on these projects, who are starting up these companies, as we look at the agreements around patent sharing, cost sharing, commercialization of technologies, licensing of those technologies, and really supporting the entrepreneurial spirit of our faculty, staff, and student researchers. And I'm not looking for a specific answer now, but as you continue to come before us, I think that that is a really integral piece to looking forward to 2030, as you and your team are doing.
So Chair Davenport and Regent Holland, thanks for that comment. And actually, this evening, my colleague Rick Hipsch, he was here with me. He's organizing an event at the Huntington Stadium where we are collecting over 400 plus folks who are engaged with our technology commercialization office. Many of them will be on Zoom, given the weather and so on. But yeah, we are collectively engaging with the community in order to understand different pathways which we can take in order to simplify this process of taking our lab-based research to the commercial market in the fastest manner and provide success for our students, our postdocs, and our faculty in a good manner. One of the ideas I will be exploring with you in the future, we're calling it GAP Fund. In order to bridge this, the people call it valley of death or mind the gap or different terminology. But we are trying to create a strategy in order to really bridge this gap in the rapid manner. And I'll be describing to you as we conceive this fund and create this fund and start to see the impact of this on our community. So thank you very much for that question.
Thank you for that, Regent Verhalen. We look forward to hearing more about that as we move forward. And Regent Johnson, please.
Thank you. And thank you, Vice President, for an excellent presentation. I think we have a really exciting future in research, and I'm glad you're here. In the past, the university has taken funding to study wild rice on or near Indian reservations. And this was frequently done without the consent or consultation of Indian tribes. And my understanding is Dean Burr of CFANS has drafted indigenous research guidelines. And I was just wondering where those were and if those are moving forward.
Okay, so Chair Davenport, Regent Johnson. Actually, I'm glad you asked this question because next week I'm meeting with my colleague Karen Diver here. She actually pulled together a very comprehensive research guidelines for indigenous research policy. This proposal has been distributed across many layers of leadership. And we have collected comments from everyone. And next week we meet together to go through those comments and try to finalize this document. So I'm hoping that this policy will address very comprehensively for many different topical areas that we try to do under this indigenous research guidelines. And I'll be sharing that with all of you once it's approved by Karen and her team.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. There's a lot going on and a lot that we look forward to hearing about. So any other questions? Thank you. Thank you very much. Excellent presentation. We look forward to seeing you again. And colleagues, at this time, we will take a 10-minute break and re-adjourn at 10:20. Welcome back. I call the Mission Fulfillment Committee back to order, and we will continue with our third item, which is a discussion of progress toward MPACT 2025 enrollment goals at the University of Minnesota Duluth campus. We welcome Interim Chancellor Dave McMillan, who will join Provost Croson for the presentation. But first, I would like to ask President Gable to provide any opening comments. President Gable, please.
Thank you, Chair Davenport, Vice Chair Johnson, and members of the committee. So at the September meeting, and as part of the board's priorities for this year, you heard from Chancellor Holtzclaw about the University of Minnesota Crookston's enrollment management strategy. And in October, from Acting Chancellor Janet Shrunk Erickson about similar efforts at the University of Minnesota Morris. They emphasized our MPACT 2025 goals, as well as reviewed peer comparisons and competitors, student demographic data, marketing and recruiting, how they're engaging K-12 partners, and other attributes of their plans. At today's meeting, you will hear from Interim Chancellor Dave McMillan, who I may note was recognized by TCB Magazine's Top 100 People to Know in 2023. You will hear from him the University of Minnesota Duluth's corresponding efforts, their 2022 to 2026 strategic enrollment management plan, what they're doing to elevate strategies to grow undergraduate enrollment, and other attributes of what they have going on. You'll also hear related reports in the future from Rochester and Twin Cities as we work through this element of our feedback on MPACT 2025 to this committee. But before I turn it over to Provost Croson and Interim Chancellor McMillan, I want to take this opportunity to express sincere appreciation to everyone at UMD for all they're doing in Duluth and what that means for our entire system. And I think you'll see how that good work is allowing us to fulfill our mission both on campus and to the entire state. So with that, I'll turn it over, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Yes, indeed. Interim Chancellor McMillan, Provost Croson.
Thank you, President Gable, Chair Davenport, and members of the committee. So today I'm going to note what we stressed in our prior presentations, which is that we'll present in May a discussion of tuition and pricing strategies for the board to consider, including our current strategy and alternative strategies for pricing and aid, payment plans, and other features. Before then, each of these presentations will focus on enrollment activities based on our current tuition and pricing strategy. So we're going to defer conversations about the strategy until May, when we can explore alternative models. As a reminder, MPACT 25 sets undergraduate goals for each campus to reach by fall 2025, and each of these presentations focuses on the actions taken by the campuses to meet their goals. Go to the next slide. You saw these fall 22 enrollment numbers in October, but I'll highlight the key takeaways. Overall enrollment has been relatively flat over the last 10 years, with changes year to year within a few percent up or down. The decrease in fall 2020 of 2.6% was, of course, due to the pandemic, and we're continuing to work on recovering from that dip in enrollment. Just so you have a point of reference, the Duluth campus numbers are represented by the gold section on this chart. Go to the next one. We here show the number of new freshmen enrolled dropped in fall 2020, had a significant rebound in fall 21, and is remaining stable this academic year, fall 22. Additionally, the annual enrollment memo that we sent you in October explains that applications are up from fall 22, and this decline in incoming students was an intentional pulling back from a banner year in fall 21. Finally, a reminder that our transfer student numbers reflect the nationwide trend of declining transfer students on all of our campuses. I'll repeat the regional numbers that I've shared previously. From 2011 to 2020, first-time students at Minnesota State's two-year schools have dropped by over 30%, and transfers into the Minnesota State's four-year schools have dropped by over 22%. System-wide, our transfer enrollments has dropped by 20% since that time. With that system-wide and statewide context, I'll turn the presentation over to Interim Chancellor McMillan to provide the enrollment update for the Duluth campus.
Very good, thank you. Provost Croson, and thank you, Chair Davenport and President Gable. I'll open with a couple of broad remarks here, beginning with, again, a thank you to the board and making system-wide enrollment priorities a key topic for us. It matters, and it was something I was interested when I was in your seats, and I'm even more interested in now that I find myself in this role. So it's always a privilege to be in this room. I felt that way as a regent, and now that I have shifted from a governance lens to a leadership lens at our second largest system campus, it's even more of a privilege to return. I will note the lights feel brighter here than they did over there. So, but at the outset, I also want to thank the senior leadership team in Duluth. Everything you're going to see today and virtually everything you're going to hear from me, they had a big hand in helping prepare me for, and I'm privileged and honored to lead a good team, a great team up there, and I would be very remiss if I didn't make a note about the extremely challenging situation they're trying to manage through. Unprecedented two-day closure, or not closure, reduced operations here in the middle of finals week. So something on the order of 500 final exams needing to be rescheduled and packed into Friday and Saturday, originally just into Saturday. So anyway, I can't say enough about the team up north, and I'll make one call out about the data and material in here. That is our Assistant Vice Chancellor, Mary Keenan, who many of you might think of Bob McMaster on this campus. She does all of that for us. I don't think our Executive Vice Chancellor for Academic Affairs is here. She's in the city, but she's trying to manage this rescheduling challenge up north. So Amy Heidepelto is not here. Everybody else is up north where they should be. So using the Shashank Priya's comment about what do we face, and let's talk about it right away. I think that what I would say as you look at this slide is we are competing in a very oversupplied marketplace, the regional university marketplace. Both the public and the private side of that are significantly oversupplied. There's a pretty significant, probably an understatement, demand challenge that lies ahead. And we're a titch more expensive than some of our regional competitors. So as I think about ways to frame this up, those are what I'll call macro socioeconomic challenges around which we put the thoughts together. So key to this is undergraduate education at UMD. That's the red bar or the maroon bar, I guess. It has always been and will continue to be critical to UMD's success. And stabilizing that undergraduate enrollment and hopefully growing it a bit are as near and dear to my heart as anything else in the next couple of years. I also want to point out the other elements of the bars there, the green, the gray, and the blue. Graduate education and graduate research support is critical to our mission. We are the second largest outside of, if we don't count academic medical research at Mayo, pardon me, Regent Johnson. But just academic research, Duluth is the second largest hub in the state, of course, behind this place. But we're very proud of that, and it's critical to our mission. So about 6% of our students, 576 is the 2023 number. Our graduate students, also important, but administered here. But we host them on the Duluth campus or the medical and pharmacy schools, the Duluth campuses of each. That's about 3%. Of enrollment has been pretty steady, although pharmacies, of course, nationwide facing some challenges. And then non-degree seeking students, that green one has grown a bit over this decade. And I wish I could say that was a great thing. It's primarily college in the schools and PSEO. It's good, but I wouldn't sit here and tell you that that's how we're going to make this thing work. It's a state priority that from a policies perspective is good. But the growth there, I would much rather see that in undergraduate enrollment. We'll continue to support everything in the PSEO, CIS space, but I just don't want you to be misled that looking at growth in non-degree there it's actually fairly steady, but it went up a bit, is an answer to our challenges. So Now we pull up just the undergraduate enrollment, and you get a much more, stark picture of thinking of the last decade here. 9,100, as you heard from my colleagues in Morris and Crookston, our number in the Impact 2025 plan was 9,100. That's not feasible. The 8,700 number you see there, I'm going to label as highly aspirational. But we need aspirational goals. It exceeds what you'll see in the strategic enrollment management plan that I put the highlights into your docket materials. I hope you had a chance to take a look at them. It exceeds it because we were off about 330 students starting fall of 2022, and that plan was inked in January of 22. And anyway, it's a dynamic plan. We'll continue to update it, but we were planning for 7% growth, and if you add 330 to the 774 and then add 7%, that'll get you to that 8,700 number, which again, I repeat, is aspirational. There is good news here. Our entering class this fall of new high school students rebounded substantially from the fall of 2020. But it's still 50 to 100 short of where we'd really like it to be to solve this problem for a longer term. So you just heard Provost Croson talk about the challenges around transfer students, and new high school competition is really getting fierce. Again, my colleagues in Crookston and Morris highlighted some of that, but we compete, UMD competes directly in what looks to me to be one of the most oversupplied markets. And it's an old term, but it is one we use to define ourselves at times, and that's regional comprehensive. I like regional university better, but ultimately the path forward is what do we become, and how do we brand, and how do we build a value proposition that isn't necessarily a regional comprehensive. As I said, it's old. We can do better than that, and I think there's highlights of that we need to go after. I won't repeat the demographics, but I think we go from about 64,000 students on average coming out of Minnesota high schools, peaking at 66 or 67 next year, and then way down. So this is a significant concern for us. Again, I mentioned the strategic enrollment management plan in the front of the materials, and I'm going to focus on two elements of that: recruitment and retention, because it's a two-part problem with enrollment. And that 330 I mentioned that we're down, that's one part recruitment, students we weren't able to recruit, and two parts retention, students we were not able to keep. So that's a good way to think about the resources and effort that we have going into this. The best student to recruit, obviously, is the one that's already on campus. We get it. I know it's a challenge here. It's a challenge everywhere, but I'll have a little bit more to say about that. Quick run through our demographics at the campus. We are, a traditional regional campus. You look at our average age of students. You look at we're very proud of this, but we're 85% Minnesotan. Heavy emphasis, of course, on the Twin Cities metro area. Not quite half. That's how I found UMD, and I know a couple others around the table here all found UMD that way as well. We're another 38% from outstate Minnesota. So a total, then you throw in Wisconsin, 95% of our student body is right here in the upper Midwest. Sadly, that's also the place where that demographic challenge is worst. So that's where we're at. I'll have a little more to say about the other piece there, and then international as we get a little later into the program. A couple call-outs though here. We're low on Pell eligible, and that's I know that's directly a result of where we recruit and where we've gotten our students from. So when you hear me talk about aid and the need for aid, we have need-based aid is fairly formulaic, but we have more students in that middle income bracket, and so that's why we have a pretty small number, or at least 21% Pell eligible students. Again, I don't have a solution for that today, but it's one of the factors that drives how we look at our aid situation. Our first generation students declining a little. I don't have an answer for that either, but that used to be a bit higher than that, and it's come down. And we're I think, in contrast to this campus, we've got more males on campus than females. So again, just observations that that's been coming down. We've been, especially in the Swenson College of Science and Engineering, losing a disproportionate number of male students, and so I would expect that to even up over time. And then the last call out for you here is that our student athlete number is a little low here. We want to make sure we're doing apples to apples comparison. If we put a marker in that right now, it's about 385 and growing hopefully next year to something closer to 400. Athletics, D1 and D2 are very, very important elements of what happens up at UMD. So that's it for those call outs on that. Let me turn now to some of these enrollment challenges. And again, I reiterate, we see our enrollment challenge as one part recruitment and two parts retention. On the recruiting side, the docket materials highlighted a bunch of things for you, and the one I want to focus on is we look at where admitted students landed when they didn't land at UMD. And there's really two groups of those. There's R1s, and that's here, Madison, Iowa State, and then regionals that are direct competitors with us, Mankato, St. Thomas, Eau Claire, La Crosse, NDSU. Those are our primary competitors. And as we look at those, I think what we really have to better understand, and one of the highlights, I think, of this opportunity is just to make sure we appreciate that R1 overlap in admissions, because they typically choose to go somewhere else. We yield about 10% of students who come who are admitted at Madison or Minneapolis, and we yield about 37 or 38, I think, % if somebody's just at UMD or admitted to UMD and at a regional. So that's a fact. I think it's a marketplace reality. I think it got exacerbated as places like the Twin Cities and R1s everywhere expanded enrollment criteria. So it's a more competitive market than it was, and I'm not here to complain about it. Just macroeconomic forces are at work, and we need to sort it out and find out where we're going to go. So shifting from that admit overlap with R1s into the regional space, which is where I want to spend most of the time, we need to refine and better articulate our value proposition relative to those regional competitors. And it isn't that we haven't been doing good work. We've got great branding, and Lynn Williams and Mary Keenan, our materials are superb, but we haven't updated the branding side of that since 2016 or 17, and it's time to get back on that. So we have an RFP out, been working in concert with the President's office and the Provost's office, and we're going to get some hopefully high-level national caliber help in terms of what should a brand look like today. And I hope I get a chance to come back to talk to you as we start to get that back in here and take a look at what should a 2023, 2024 branding and value proposition for UMD look like. So we're looking forward to that. But the rest of that differential is we've got to do a better job talking about affordability. That's really a financial aid conversation. Again, not so much on the need side, but that merit side, where we don't have the philanthropic resources to look at scholarships quite as aggressively as some other folks. And I'm going to say this at least once, and I hope I say it 2 or 3 times. I can see no greater potential benefit for UMD, and I believe Morrison Crookston too, than success around that Greater Minnesota Scholarship opportunity at the Capitol. That would do a lot. I'm very confident that would do a lot. So shifting to retention away from recruiting, I'm not going to read all the bullet points here. You can read them and ask me questions about them later. But we're a little short on staff, and retention, most of the retention efforts, whether it is a professional advisor, whether it is a coaching resource in student life, whether it is someone to take oodles of analytical data apart and translate it into action. We're down about 10% on staff since 2018. That's a little over 200 people, almost all staff, and that's inside the civil service and P&A ranks primarily, but union also. And the Rio, while it was a good thing, and I voted for it, it took almost 100 people out of our staff ranks. So again, not here to complain about that, but when I talk to the team up north and start to learn really get under the hood of this issue. It takes people to really impact and get in the middle of this student success base and make a difference. So we got to figure that out. I think Peak offers us some help there. And I also think that that changes that we can make, structural and tactical changes up north, figure out where we can invest and where we need to invest and where we need to shift some folks around is probably the best thing we can do. We got to make sure we know where we are successfully recruiting and who we're successfully recruiting, and then making sure we set those students up to succeed, because that's changing too, and that drives a lot of that retention conversation. So those are, I think, the last thing I'd highlight here, and I don't think anything's new here either, but really understanding what of this is driven by those COVID cohorts, if you will, and what of it is long-term, and where to make those investments. That's really critical. On the opportunity side, moving from challenges to opportunities, I like opportunities better. We need to get better information about net cost to our students sooner, and we've got a couple different initiatives underway. I've already highlighted the fact that we got to get better material in the hands of students and their parents, prospective students and their parents, on our value proposition, and that is a super high priority. We need a simpler and easier process for interested students to figure out how to apply. And a couple things I'll highlight here, where we find a lot of promise in the Minnesota Office of Higher Education Direct Admit program. That's a big one. I've just heard this morning that almost 750, maybe a little more than that, inquiries in that program, and about 260 of those we think have turned into applications. So that needs reauthorization. That's not something we can only do at UMD. So when we're looking for some help there, we want to see the Office of Higher Education keep that going. Lots of opportunities to partner, back to that college in the schools, and our PSEO work. We've got partner high schools. This looks like a very promising place to invest some time and money and effort. And again, now this will be, I think, number 2, that Greater Minnesota Scholarship Program would do wonders for us to go after and keep some of these students right here in Minnesota and right here at UMD. The last thing I'd note is that the Minnesota Student Exchange Program, MSEP, used to include Michigan and Illinois. They both got out, and we need to find some ways. Perhaps it's tuition waivers. We haven't used those for a while up north. Of course, we got to find a way to pay for them if we're going to use them. But that's a group of students on that last part of my demographic slide that I was on 2 or 3 slides ago, that we really like to go after. We had some success when tuition was equalized around those with that program, but the program's changed, and rather than waiting for it to change back, I think we better go after that ourselves. So international initiatives, if my EVCAA, Amy Heidepelto, was here, we could have her, and if you want, we can engage her. We can get you information later about some international initiatives. She's deeply involved in those with Provost Croson, both system-wide and some accelerator programs on the Duluth campus that would serve a system-wide function. We're 1.5% international. We think we can maybe double that. So we'd like to go after that. And another opportunity is to do better with those underrepresented populations. And we have a new program, and we're looking at hiring somebody that can get out and do a better job with hosted events for recruits and would-be students. So there's a few other things I've listed on there. You see, self-selection, ACT, or test optional, as I think I always heard it talked about in this room, but we're encouraged by that and find a lot of student interest in that as well. Marketing. Lots of marketers on this board. I know from my experience, folks that believe in it, we believe in it, and you'll see a fair amount in the docket materials about this, and also pitching some of the accolades that UMD has gotten over the last 4 years. I didn't put all those in there, but what we wanted to convey here was just give you a flavor for what we're doing. A second, a big pitch for me right now would be that we are very, very interested and very, very supportive of a system-wide marketing approach. That would be extremely helpful to us. And if that can come about in a way that coordinates with our work to better define our value proposition, that would be really, really something. We think that one of the most powerful things we can do in competing with regional and the R1s out there is to pitch the strength of this University of Minnesota. None of those regionals on that list, except perhaps NDSU, can call themselves part of a research university, and the second largest research space in the state, joined at the hip with the, I'll pick a number from Dr. Priya's presentation, maybe 10, largest research university in the world. That is a strength that we have and my colleagues have, and we got to get out and pitch that more, because whether it matters to a 17-year-old or not, I don't know, but I do know that engagement in research activity is one of the strongest retention tools we have. If you get a student hooked up with a professor to go study the water temperature over time at Lake Superior, they are not going to leave. They are going to get their degree there and maybe stay. Who knows? And I make up the example, but I did meet somebody doing that on the professor's side, and he told me he had 3 students working directly with him on that. So our brand, couple highlights. We're the mid-sized campus of the university with big campus research opportunities and big campus academic excellence. We've got a lot of academic rigor reflected in our research, and in an interdisciplinary, 4 different colleges and a research 2 world-class research institutes. All of that comes together in what I would say is a setting. Well, it's 22 inches under snow today, but it's a setting that is second to very, very, very few universities of our size. Our rec sports and outdoor program, I'll sit here in front of everybody and go on record, is the best in the country for a school of 10,000 students. Nobody close. And we're 10,000 students, 575 faculty members on a fully interconnected campus, and we're also very safe. In 2021, we got awarded the safest campus in Minnesota. So there's just a handful of things, without getting into programmatic stuff, that we'll be pitching, and we're going to test drive with this firm and get out there and figure out how we go out and market ourselves even more effectively and get in and draft behind the power of the University of Minnesota system. Couple of other retention initiatives, opportunities that I want to call out. Again, I won't read all these to you, but I want to definitely call out one of the ones that I'm really excited about, the Swenson College of Science and Engineering, our largest college at UMD, and used to be, I think, the 3rd largest in the system. It's probably not quite there now, but it's still very, very consequential. With the help of with a donor, a very, very important and very substantial donor, they are launching this year the CURES program, which stands for something like classroom-based undergraduate research experiences. And the goal of that is right now something like, I think 40% of our students, undergrads in Swenson, get a chance to work with a professor on a research project. By the end of next year, they want to give that opportunity to every student that comes into Swenson. That's ambitious, but with the help of a donor, we can do that, and we're pretty excited about that. High impact practices, whether those be internships, global learning opportunities, undergraduate research, community-based learning, every one of those drives increases in retention, drives increases in degree completion, and drives increases in student satisfaction. And you can see some metrics in our materials about what we're doing with high impact practices, but we want to exceed 3/4 of the students by their 3rd and 4th years having had and reported to us that they had a high-impact practice and participated in it. Last measure here in the retention space, I like metrics, I always have, and we've built some metrics into our strategic enrollment management plan around DFW rates, and namely those are hovering under 13%, which is unacceptably high, and with a whole bunch of different tactics and techniques, we want to drop that to 10% and hopefully lower than that as we go forward. But we're holding ourselves accountable in that space, and we need to do better. Students don't succeed, we don't succeed, and we need to. So two pricing graphs here. The first one is our peer set. And I think as you see that migrate from just a flat total cost of living or total cost of attendance number on the left side, we migrate one space to the right in this national look. And that's really reflected in the fact that we just don't have access to the merit-based aid that we'd like to and other financial aid tools. So once again, that Greater Minnesota Scholarship Project opportunity, and very importantly, ours UMD's finding more philanthropic opportunities and leveraging those and putting them to use. But I don't think we need to spend too much time on that. That's, again, a peer set for many, many different drivers, from compensation to outcomes, but we used it here to show you and be standardized with the other campuses. So a little closer to home, pricing versus that second set of competitors. You can see them there, and we are a little more expensive than them. And I think that given the value proposition work that we're doing, I think that we can sell that. We need to do a better job of selling it, and we need to get out and pitch what our differentiating factors are. As we migrate from the left side to the right side, however, it would be incredibly helpful if we can find, again, some more of that financial aid to bring that net price down. So what I see when I look at this is, yes, our tuition's high relative to those other regionals, but 5 of those aren't research universities. We are. So that's a big ticket, a differentiator. We can't rely on tuition increases going forward. That's not a place where, as in my seat, we may need to do some modest ones, but I'm not gonna, we gotta watch where our pricing's at because it's already high. We have to find more financial aid, and we have to better differentiate ourselves. So if you take, not a lot out of this, I want you to take the fact that this is our highest priority at UMD. Culture and a commitment to culture and inclusivity are right there as well. But in terms of things that I'm thinking about every day, in addition to that culture commitment, this is it. So I'm not, again, I think I've talked about most of these. I wanted you to hear from me personally that nothing consumes more of my time. We're looking forward to a system-wide marketing strategy. You will find us tucking into that and leveraging it every day, every way we can. We'll look forward to leveraging initiatives like PEAK, so that we are keeping our own eye on our own costs. Structural and tactical changes up north. I talked about a couple of those with respect to things like degree mapping to degree completions, probably the better way to say that. We got work we can do in that space, and we got to get out there again and find a long-term enrollment level that I am committed to making higher than where we are, but we're not going back to that high water mark in 2012 of 11,800 students. It would be disingenuous for me to, and not achievable for me to tell you that, but I do want to find the bottom of this now, where our enrollment's gone to, turn it around and move it up. We need your help. We look forward to your help. And again, I'll close on the compliment that I gave to you as a board, and to Joan Gable and Provost Rachel Croson for making system-wide enrollment management strategy a priority. Super important. Thanks for your time.
Thank you, Interim Chancellor McMillan. That was a very direct, matter-of-fact presentation. In my view, and I have some experience in this arena, you're looking at all the impactful things to do. No one in themselves is a fix, and even as a whole, they collectively work off each other. But while we queue up questions, a question about your strength, R1 research, engage students in research. Are you looking at that middle piece between your faculty researchers, and undergrad students, where there's room for growth in graduate education?
Chair Davenport, great question and topic that we spend a considerable amount of time on. You know, the size of our graduate class our graduate education has shrunk a bit over that same time, and we'd like to stop that. I think we have to find the bottom and turn it around with respect to undergraduate education, and because graduate education is more expensive. And there's a few PhD programs that we work in concert with the Twin Cities on to get those, those moving, but that master's level work is we think, a sweet spot for UMD. And it's not just a recruitment thing to be a research university. I hear it every day from our faculty that we want to be faculty at the University of Minnesota and at the University of Minnesota Duluth because it is a research institution. It differentiates them. And the only way they can really be good at it, especially in a major research operation or an ongoing one over time, is to find some graduate students to help them do it. So I think that's a bit of a roundabout answer, but the answer is yes, we've got to grow that, but we have to understand the costs of doing so, and we got to get undergraduate enrollment in check and start growing it again so that we've got some resources to really do a thoughtful job around who and what programs are we going to pursue and try to grow.
Right, very good, thank you. We have questions. We'll go to Regent Farnsworth, Swigum, Kenyanya, Hipsch, and Verhalen.
Thank you, Chair Davenport, and thank you, Interim Chancellor McMillan, for the presentation. I also thought it was very direct and valuable and easy to follow, and so I echo the Chair's comments. A couple comments and then a question. I resonated with something you said around reporting, the value of hopefully being able to come back and have a follow-up conversation, that reporting back structure around our enrollment efforts, and you were referencing what ends up happening with the more national marketing approach and some of your work there. And so I agree with that, and I feel that way about all of these system campus enrollment presentations. So for current and future committee leadership, hope to see whatever, phase 2 of this series looks like, because I think it's been a valuable series. More specifically about UMD, as a former PSCO student, certainly recognize some of the complexities and challenges of institutional relationships and support from a resource standpoint with PSCO and CIS, but I think, and you referenced this a little bit later after the first mention, how to leverage those students from a recruitment standpoint. I think that's just a captive audience, and you could say that about any PSCO program or CIS with different institutions. The second thing is I completely agree with you about the Greater Minnesota Scholarship. So I share your enthusiasm about that, but also really understand how that's going to be an important tool for all of our systems, but in the context of today, particularly the work that you're doing at UMD. So I'm hoping, us as regents, and I know students and all the different groups that government relations works with will have an opportunity to robustly support that this session. So whatever that looks like from someone in my role and all of our roles here. And then maybe this is more of a question, and I don't know who it's directed to, but in terms of the system-wide marketing approach and moving into that work, from a implementation, or kind of, maybe this is more for the provost, where is that at? Have we, from a resource allocation standpoint and our processes from the board, from the administrative side, is that something that is already underway and it's well resourced and there's really nothing else that we need to do to make sure that work happens, or kind of how can we be as supportive as possible about that work? Because again, it's definitely been touched on in this entire series. I think with the focus on, again, today's presentation about UMD and that value proposition work, I think that system-wide marketing approach in particular will be beneficial for UMD. And then I'll just end my comments by saying, I hope that we have Regent Johnson has talked about this in the past. I hope we have a chance to go back to UMD soon, because I feel like it's been a while since, just speaking on behalf of myself, my last visit. And I think those physical touch points are very important to our system-wide governance work as a board. So thank you.
Thank you. Provost Croson, would you like to comment?
Chair Davenport, Regent Farnsworth, thanks for the question. So as you remember, in the first year of this system-wide marketing campaign, we developed materials, there were focus groups, there were visits to the campuses, there was a lot of activity. They tested them out, and then they launched. There were 5, it was mostly a digital campaign. There were 5 made products, one that was a system-wide video, and then, 6 products, and one for each of the 5 campuses. They all ran. When we did our system-wide enrollment presentation, which we typically do in June, we presented the kind of results from that one, first time through. This last year, we decided we were going to focus on the Duluth, Crookston, and Morris campuses. So we ran the system-wide, we did placements for the system-wide videos and those 3 campuses. We did not, so we reallocated more money toward those, and we did not pay to place Rochester and the Twin Cities with these kind of perception that enrollment was doing fine there. We just yesterday, perhaps, got some early feedback for the effectiveness of that campaign, and that will be part of the June presentation when we talk about the system-wide strategic enrollment overall. And I think there's an interest and a commitment to continuing it, but we want to make sure that this is the right way to allocate and spend those funds.
Thank you.
Chair Davenport. In my haste to wind down, I didn't put the question slide up. The board had asked us to come up with some questions, so I just note that that's in front of you now. So, and thank you, Regent Farnsworth, for that input. You will hear back.
Awesome. Yeah, I just want to say thanks. And I am seeing ads on my TikTok feed recently for system-wide marketing, which I haven't seen before, and so I appreciate that.
Very good. Thank you. Let's move to Regent Sviggum.
Madam Chair, thank you. Chancellor, good to have you here with us. You and I have had numbers of conversations in the past regarding Duluth when you were sitting on this side. I think bottom line we had in the conversation was there's nothing short of 1,000 more kids at Duluth that wouldn't solve a lot of your challenges and a lot of your problems, opportunities. That was a number that we kept throwing out, and I realize it's probably not readily attainable, but it certainly needs to be our goal as we look forward to our strategy. When you began your introduction, you focused a lot on price. You focused a lot on tuition. And I think the word you used was a titch more expensive. And I'm not sure what a titch is until you get to the final graph, and I see a titch is like $2,000 to $3,000. That's the way it looks to me. Tell me what we can do besides the Greater Minnesota Scholarship before the legislature. I mean, that's great, maybe to bank or hope for their action, but maybe we have to take care of ourselves, maybe rather than just bank on politicians to come forward to us. Is it, can we look at price elasticity? Can we, as one factor to maybe get 1,000 kids there, our costs compared to the other schools? You know, why are we is it just because we're a research facility that we're $2,000, $3,000, $4,000 higher? I want to give you the opportunity, David, to tell us what you would do if you were a benevolent dictator to get those 1,000 kids. And not banking on the legislature. Excuse me, Madam Chair.
Chancellor McMillan.
Chair Davenport. Regent Sviggum, yes, I probably said titch, and that's because it's undefinable, right? So, couple things. I'm going to start with philanthropy. We've probably got to double down in terms of our work. We got a tremendous director of a development team in Duluth. I'm privileged and honored to work with them every day as we look at our opportunities there. I talked to you about one big donor that had done quite a bit. We need to double down in that space to grow that scholarship aid. We can also revisit something, and I don't have all the history here, and I don't need it all, but we used to offer a more robust set of waivers, and we can do that, but we have to fund them. And there's places where with tuition waivers or partial waivers might be extremely helpful. We use them with graduate students now. I mentioned, those Michigan, Illinois kids. That might be another place to do it. And that's internally funded, but I don't see those resources right now, but we got to have a deeper conversation at UMD and then with Vice President Tonneson and the rest as we develop our budget. But it looks to me like that's a second place we ought to be looking to turn the corner on this enrollment challenge. And thirdly, to answer the question about elasticity, yes, we've done a limited study. It was done 2 years ago, year and a half ago, before I got there, but I have had the chance to review it, and my UMD economics education reminds me a bit about price elasticity. It's not a world where elasticity is typically strong, but I think there is an opportunity there. The initial research we did suggested that a slight decrease could be offset, drop price and grow quantity, but I personally do not have enough confidence in that limited study right now to take that risk. Because if we don't grow Q, when we lower price, we got even bigger problems, and I'm in front of you with an even more direct, challenging message. So, and right now, I do believe that one of the reasons we yield 10% of the crossover in admits with R1s is because some students do want that experience. They want a mid-size, academically rigorous, research-driven opportunity. So we're probably priced appropriately for that slice, but we're overpriced, at least in terms of how we're selling that value proposition with respect to the Mankato's and the La Crosses. So I want to go double down on that value proposition, pitch why we're worth that, while we explore a couple of these other, I'll call them sub-strategies or sub-tactics, and while we grow philanthropic resources and while we chase the legislature for this opportunity. But a couple things probably within our control, a couple that look a little too risky for me is 4.5 months in, sitting in this seat to embark on. I'm not ready to try that price elasticity thing yet, but we could go study it. We could launch a deeper dive into that and see if that's sustainable. But our initial study was a small N, the number of people in it, and while it yielded some promising potential, it again just not enough bedrock under that for me to come to President Gable and Provost Croson and you and say this is how we want to proceed. So I'm underconfident in that right now.
Thank you. Next, we'll go to UMD alum, Regent Kenyanya.
I was waiting. There's a few of us up here. You got to be specific, and Representative Tuft will be one soon as well. Thank you, Madam Chair, Interim Chancellor McMillan. I'll start with a few lighthearted comments and then get to my question. First was, as I was looking at that slide with all the marketing material that Lynn Williams' teams comes up with, I saw similar material, and there's no snow in any of it, and it kind of felt like bait and switch. When I finally got there and experienced the polar vortex up there, but and then my other comment is you brought up intramurals, and how rec sports and how that's a strong program, and I have to vouch for that as the 2016 kickball champion. President Gable, you could add that to your shout-outs tomorrow. But now to my question. You talked about being down 10% staff. I think the number was 10. And as someone who's been able to, as you put it, look under the hood, this is my guess, and I'm wondering if you can validate that or if you've seen that connection, is that there's a link from that 10% loss in staff to the increase in DFW, the decrease in retention, and the functions the staff members play are important. And as those changes happen and the difficult changes and decisions that were made by previous campus leadership and this board, we're going to see an impact. Is there a link there, or have you been able to make one?
Chancellor McMillan.
Yeah, Chair Davenport and Regent Kenyanya, I knew a lot about you. I didn't know the kickball piece, so that's great. I'm going to stop and watch a kickball game next spring and see. But fair and very good question. I don't know how strong that causal link is, but I do know we need more resources in that staff space to support faculty as we educate students who, for one reason or another, aren't as ready to come into UNB and succeed, or any school for that matter. And I'm going to use entry-level math and chemistry courses. Those are where some of those DFW numbers are high. And there's a lot of work underway to figure out what could we do better. And that's where that staff commitment needs to be. And I don't know that it got worse because staff left, but where we sit today is we don't have the staff to invest in supporting those faculty as they look at new things. And the other big one is analytical dashboards. I don't know if it's Lincoln Call Center or who down here generates the numbers, but we get a fair amount of data. It's taking it apart and figuring out, okay, this one's going there, that's going there, and here's this. Those are the kind of staff investments that we really need to make. So I think you got two factors at work. You may have students less prepared to succeed coming into the system, and we have lost staff. And remember, again, half of that total of reduction was people who voluntarily chose to go in the Rio at the outset of the COVID challenge. So, this isn't, but we've also had cuts. My predecessor led, a lot of years of those, and you experienced them as a student, and I was a regent, so no blame laid on anybody. But if we're going to go forward and continue to recruit into a student body, potential student body population, we're going to have to be ready to invest, or we'll be bringing students in that can't succeed or that we're not prepared to help succeed.
President Gable, would you like to comment?
Yes, thank you, Chair Davenport. And just as a follow-up to what Chancellor McMillan is describing in response to your question, Regent Kenyanya, that part of the advantage of a system, as opposed to if Duluth were, the Duluth campus were attempting to solve this problem alone, is that we can lean into where we have shared strengths. And this is a very big part of the peak process, is rather than just assuming that you have to replace one for one, we can look to where we have strengths around the system and share those strengths, and that's a big part of what we'll see as peak continues to unfold. That doesn't eliminate the challenge that Chancellor McMillan has described in terms of staff headcount being low. We know we're at a historical low, and so hiring in different places around the system will be a part of what the future looks like. But it is a lot to ask a campus to solve problems like this on their own. And we don't have to, because we have the benefit of deepening systemness where we can look to each other and strengths that each campus has to address some of these challenges.
Yes, that's right. Thank you. Regent Hipsch.
Thank you, Chair Davenport. I am not a kickball champion.
Yes.
My parents wanted me to play Yahtzee, so I trained. So on the last two slides, you had the word I like this year, that my favorite word is pathways. And we heard that a lot with Morris and Crookston. And so, like, as we were talking system-wide campuses, what are those pathways that we're creating for students? So like, if I'm a parent or a student and I'm thinking about a college and I want to be a pharmacist, what's going to give me the best chance to becoming that pharmacist? And so if we join a University of Minnesota school, do we have a better pathway to get there than joining an out-of-state school, for instance? And so I think that's my first question. So pathways to success in both grad school and professional schools, also pathways to good jobs. We have 1,000 job openings in perm, and we're going to need more robotics. We're going to need more everything. And so do we have the right mix of majors at these, at all of our colleges, basically? And if we don't, what's the pathway to get to there so we can recruit students to have success? I think that's, we kind of almost have to reverse engineer. I know it's a tough question, but I think that's, there's got to be an advantage. There's got to be a competitive advantage to having a system. I think there is. By giving our students success in our own system first. So that's my question.
Thank you. Chancellor McMillan.
Yes, Chair Davenport and Regent Hipsch. Good, again, good question, and we did include a page in your materials that gets a little specific. It's entitled Pathway Initiatives, and I won't highlight all of those, but we do think long and hard and try to be good partners both inside and outside the system. There's a LSB partnership with pharmacy to provide Duluth students with an option to pursue an MBA while they're up there doing their pharmacy piece. We've got, I highlighted a couple in here around La Crosse and UW Superior, completing engineering degrees through the Swenson College 3+4 programs. And in that health space, again, with UMTC right here, Master in Nursing degree for Swenson College majors who are coming out out of that program. We've done some work in the AA degree space with the Minnesota Transfer Curriculum and looking at opportunities around, and Regent Johnson is front and center in this space, who built the Tribal Administration and Governance Program and the M-Trees program. Those are all things that articulate pretty well, but we can do better. So I'm buzzing through a handful of those that I described in there, but I also mentioned international, and we've got some nice 2+2 programs that Executive Vice Chancellor Heide Pelto was just in Asia finalizing some of those articulation agreements, and hopefully those will bear fruit over time. But and then lastly, the integrated degree programs that we have with the Twin Cities campus here run through the engineering disciplines, and they're again listed in your materials. But I'm proud of those. Do I think we've done enough? No. I think we can do more. And I think we can do more inside the system, definitely. And I hope we can do more with partners in the region. So they're not always competitors. Sometimes we can work together. A challenge with a 2+2 that feeds perhaps into the Twin Cities, and I know Crookston's been looking at that and working on it, is if they come to one of our campuses for 2 years and then come here, we still have that revenue hole, and we have, for years 3 and 4, and we have metrics that don't necessarily reward the system for that outcome. So I think we should be looking at those, and we should make it as easy as possible for Minnesotans to do that. But I think we got to think through some of, where the revenue goes, and how those metrics are designed, and what behavior are they rewarding ultimately. Because that could look like a win in this example for a student that transfers here and a loss for Duluth, when in reality it's probably a win for Minnesota, because the University of Minnesota is educating that student and they're getting the degree they want and the path they want. I don't have all those answers. I would never pretend to, but I think your question's getting at the heart of something we can be better at.
A good angle to look at on that. We'll move to Regent Verhalen, then Powell, and then Rocha. Regent
Thank you.
Verhalen.
I have 4 items, and I'll try and crank through them quickly.
Not kickball?
No kickball.
Okay.
No, I was in speech and math league, so no kickball. First, it was great to see under the pathway initiatives the focus on transfer credit evaluation. I know this was a question I had for Chancellor Strunk-Erickson with Morris, which was, what are our colleges, our campuses doing to help prospective students understand what their CIS, PSEO, AP investments in high school are getting them, which also becomes part of that financial discussion that you highlighted in your presentation. And so the more that can be built out, the more it can be streamlined, the more it can be easy for prospective students who are looking at our system campuses to type in what they've done, where they've done it, how many credits they got there, and how it aligns with the general education requirements, how it aligns with the program requirements. All those kinds of things will be helpful, I believe, in helping students understand not only where they will start their college education journey, but also some of the financial components that go into that. More of a comment. On my second item is really to ask, Chancellor McMillan, is today a frost day?
A what day?
A frost day. For those of you who haven't seen the video, there was a very nice, heartwarming video put together by the
Thank you.
by the UMD leadership of students and faculty. And if you haven't seen it yet, I encourage you to go watch it, and then you will understand why I asked that question. And another item is, and kind of also keying off of our October meetings, Dean Reed was here and talking about the challenges and opportunities in hiring faculty and staff of diverse backgrounds. And this is a bit of a question that comes off what Regent Kenyanya and what Regent Hipsch asked, but a different take, which is, how is UMD structured, and is it right-sized according to the faculty, its adjunct faculty and staff, both from a general perspective, but also in thinking about the programs and, degree programs, support services, et cetera, that the university, that the college offers there, the campus offers there, and the different colleges offer there, that are not only structurally important, but dynamic in a way that as programs that were maybe historically the large programs, the large degree granting programs may change, or new degree granting programs emerge, that Duluth is able to meet that demand.
Chancellor McMillan.
Yes, Chair Davenport and Regent Verhalen. Frost Day, so we better explain that now before I get to the substance. I was attempting to say welcome, or to recognize Bulldogs on a frosty day, and I said Frost Day. And my wife immediately made a hard time of me on camera, and it became a blooper that the whole campus has now seen. And it's rather endearing, I guess, but it was my inability to articulate two words that became one. So it took me a moment there to realize what you were referencing with a frost day. Yeah, today is a snow day. That's easier to say. Yesterday was a snow day. So I referenced, I think on the slide I have up, that we have structural strategies we need to look at, and we utilize term faculty much more extensively, and that's been explained, I know, to me as a regent, and now I've had a chance to really get to understand it than this campus, and probably than any other campus in the system. I don't know that for a fact, but I know we have a much higher percentage, and it's critical to how we deliver our education outcomes. I am not ready to answer, I'm not dodging it, but we need a pretty significant, well-informed, transparent, and completely shared governance-driven look at this model that we land in that calls us a regional comprehensive university. And to me, that's how I connect these dots, is if that's an old term, and I've been told it's quite old, but we're still regional, and yet the regional space is the most oversupplied one that I've seen, public and private, and we want to narrow that a bit. We got to have that conversation and figure out, what do we want to add? You mentioned what do we want to add, but also my years in business taught me it's far harder to figure out what you're not going to do than what you're going to do. Really, really difficult. And I'm not sitting here suggesting I've landed on anything we're not going to do, but I don't know that we can always be as comprehensive as we have been. So again, in a very frank manner, which is the same way I talk to anybody on campus, we got to look at that. But it'll be done in a holistic fashion with everyone's engagement, students, staff, and faculty. So I hope I get a chance to be back here and you ask me that again, and I'm able to bring faculty, staff, and students along, and they can represent that, yeah, we took a hard look at it, and we got to the bottom of it, and here's some things that we do differently. Here's some things we're not doing today that we do, and here's some things we're probably doing today that we aren't going to always do. Is that fair on this frosty day?
Thank you. And
I don't know if I got to all of your question, but that's how I heard it. So
understood, and we'll just put a pin in it and wait for the next progress report. But in the answer, it addressed my fourth question. So thank you very much, Chair Davenport.
Thank you, and I'm looking forward to the Bulldogs and the Frost Four. And let's go to Regent Powell, Rocha, and then our Johnson.
Oh, thank you. Thanks, Chair Davenport, and thank you, Chancellor McMillan, for the good update. I want to go back to the discussion we were having previously on net cost, and I apologize in advance because I'm about to jump into the weeds here. But the reason I want to go back to it is I think you commented on, this is really, I mean, it's sort of the issue for some families, and it's the process to getting there is cumbersome. And I have to say, at Morris a couple of weeks ago, having, a similar conversation about challenges with the team and the faculty there, I heard exactly the same thing, which is because of the, how cumbersome the sort of family reporting is, that process is seen, and the time it takes to sort of convert all of the information into, an offer, if you will, to a student and their family. I think a direct quote from one of the administrators there was, they've already made the decision. We've lost before we can even get our proposal in front of the student and the family. It's just a very slow and cumbersome process. And so I guess it's sort of a plea that is there some way that we can streamline and systematize that process of getting the number in front of them on a timely basis so we don't lose, before we've even had a chance to, put our best foot forward. And then, and coupled with that, to your comment on, philanthropic support and other sources of financial aid, I mean, if we had the opportunity directly with a family, we know that the difference between their coming and not coming is $1,000, just as an example, because they're looking at, you mentioned the risk, in sort of a blanket tuition cut, but that really reduces the risk. Then if we can meet them where they are because we've got a discretionary pool, they're going to come for 4 years. And so it's really, I guess, just a plea for, it would sure help if we could do that whole thing a lot faster. Know when we're on the bubble, where for a family where it's all about us versus another institution, and a little bit of money would seal the deal. And I don't think we're, based on what you said, Chancellor, and what we heard from the team at Morris, I mean, it's a system-wide issue, and we got to get better at it. So anyway, I guess I appreciate if you want to respond, comment on that. The other thing is just to go back to the comment that Provost Croson made. I really appreciate that we're studying and analyzing these different marketing approaches, because we don't know. Right now, but it's so important to be able to, sort of come to the board with conviction, and say, we want to invest more in marketing, and here's where the next dollar is going to go, because we've studied it and we know, we know it'll work, we know we'll get more applicants, and I don't think we are quite there yet, but we're getting there. So I appreciate that work. I know it's coming, but it just seems really important. So anyway, I don't know if you want to respond, Chancellor, but this net cost conundrum, I think, is really, really frustrating.
Comments? Chancellor McMillan.
Yeah, Chair Davenport and Regent Powell, it is, and I do not sit here and pretend to understand all the complexities, but as I try to think about it at a leadership and at a little more strategic level, earlier information about aid boils down to how accurate are we being? And there's a bunch of moving parts in there, from DOE to Office of Higher Ed to the Board of Regents, and a budget, the legislature. So we don't want to suggest accuracy about how much money we have when we're not certain. But we got to do better, and then receptivity. And sometimes, and I think this is an area that would be improved with some research too. The thinking has been that if you put stuff in front of students and their family before the holiday break, it's not going anywhere. But so you start hitting it hard in January, And then as you get closer to decision date, you hope you've given them the level of accuracy and you've hit at the point when receptivity is the best. But I wholeheartedly agree with you that decomplicating that and improving just through the words, like I could go back and I think we're doing as well as anybody in that space, but we can do better and we have to because we hear that. And if my experts from Associate Vice Chancellor Mary Keenan's group were here, they'd say the same thing, and they're studying it. They are. And again, I'm looking to our president here and picking up on a theme she just threw out, but this is not a space we have to navigate ourselves. We want to always be in control of the communication with our prospective students, but best practices, ways to improve, all of that. And while I'm at it, I would also, President Gable mentioned that there's an opportunity around retention analytics. That's huge in Peak. But a couple others, I can't pass up the opportunity to say Peak will drive centralization of website development and digital marketing opportunities. We will take all of that we can get, please, please, please. And then lastly, again, Peak, I think, offers the opportunity to spend smarter in the marketing space when it's led on the system level. So that's outside your question, but I know you well enough to know you like marketing. So
I like marketing that works.
yeah, yes, better said.
We'll move now to Regent Rocha.
Thank you, Chair Davenport. Thank you, Chancellor McMillan, for the presentation. I'm not an alumnus of the campus, but I think you know the story that I am an alumnus of UMD Rec Sports. During my Haney clerkship in Duluth, one of my fellow National Guard members was in ROTC at UMD, and they were short for the Rec Sports hockey team, and they granted me an exception so I could participate. And we were not the 2016 champions. This was a little bit earlier than that. And I think we were competent, or we felt we were, until the fifth game on our schedule, which said UMD Bulldogs. And we wondered what that meant, and it was the UMD men's hockey team, and having a floor hockey rec sports team. And well, as you might expect, we lost 16-1 in a shortened game because of the mercy rule. And but the one goal that we did score was one of their players had mouthed off to the goalie, or the goalie rather had mouthed off to one of the players, and he turned around and took the ball and shot it past his own goalie. But since he stole it from me, I got credit for that goal. But it's an excellent program. I know that student life is a very, very important part of the UMD experience, and my estimation is it probably helps us with retention. This topic, UMD and where we're at with UMD, and this is, looking back over the course of nearly 8 years here, in the context of a much longer view, we could have a retreat, a 2-day retreat just on this topic versus a 75-minute presentation and conversation. You made a comment about being an oversupplied market, and my sense is it's an oversupplied market at our current price point, I think. We talk a lot about various kinds of aid, and this goes into the marketing, but I still think that families are so driven by sticker price that they're not even looking at this school. So if you can't get the conversation started, you can't show them what you have available. And that sticker price is so critical. And I think with Chancellor McMillan, in our 7.5 years together here, I like to reason by analogy, and to some extent, I look at, to simplify it, and not, with no intention other than the analogy, but it's like we're selling a can of beans, and other people are selling a can of beans for $1, and we're selling it for $1.25, and we wonder why no one's buying our beans. And then we say, well, but other people are paying $1.40, down in the Twin Cities, but, that's pork and beans, at least by public perception. And then we say, yeah, but we have some pork in our beans too, which is separate from what these other folks are selling. But I don't know that that's quite clear to the public. I think people still perceive a fair distinction, even though those of us that know the truth know that UMD does offer more than many of our competitors. So I think you kind of have to decide: are we going to make our way into that premium product, or are we going to be more cost competitive? When you talk about the Titch difference, Regent Sviggum, the number that we were looking at in the graphs showed the total cost of attendance. Well, I think for most people, they sort of build in the living costs. So the percentage difference, when you're talking 3,000 against, 12 versus 9 or 14 versus 11 is a much bigger percentage than 27 to 24. And so I think that again, when you think about people taking on a cost that they didn't have before, I think that's important. But finally, when we talk about the recruitment and why people are going to other places, I think that's missing such a huge part of this. As we've talked about, our state sends 2,000 more students out than it brings in. And some students are just going to lose, but for legacy or other premium schools that they're seeking to attend. But I do think that there's real opportunity for success in attracting those. But if they never applied, we can't track where they chose to go instead. And it's the people that aren't applying that I think we really need to try to reach out to. Over our 7.5 years together, as you know, I've been advocating very strongly on controlled costs in the system as a whole to try to bring these prices down. I'm glad to see that you're joining me in this concept that we have to look at this cost as a way of affecting our enrollment. And I've been, I think, channeling Chancellor Martin, who is a zealous advocate for trying to build UMD and to keep it cost competitive. And I appreciate the work that you're doing right now, because I think it's an excellent product. I think it's the best kept secret of the university system, and I'd like to see us be able to get us back to those the stronger numbers that we had a decade ago. So thank you.
Thank you. Any quick comment? Well, we close our session and go to Regent Johnson for the last question.
Very quick. Thanks, Chair Davenport and Regent Rocha. I think a lot of your commentary there is probably best addressed when we get to the pricing piece of this. I know, as Provost Croson explained, that's a little further down the road once the rest of the ingredients, the Twin Cities and Rochester are in here too, and it does matter. There's no question about it that it matters. But anyway, I'll leave it for later, and appreciate your knowledge of and support for Bulldog Land. I know Duluth matters to you too, so I appreciate that personal connection you have. And now we've got a whole pile of these stories to tell around mathletes, kickball, and hockey, or broomball. So.
And folks, May is the meeting for that pricing discussion. Okay. So thank you, Regent Johnson.
Thanks, Chair Davenport and Chancellor McMillan. I can't let this discussion go without at least mentioning the medical school at Duluth. And I know that's kind of administrated through here, but it was founded in 1972, so this was the 50th year of the medical school, and I realized that's the same year that Mayo Medical School opened. So we had the U here, and then those two, Northeast, Southeast, opened about the same time. It's a great medical school. It's ranked 3rd in the country in terms of training people for primary care careers, which is really important. It also does really well in terms of educating Native American physicians. And I think we rank near the top in the country for that. I think that's very notable. And I also say I know a lot of people I went to medical school with went up to Duluth to do their residencies in family medicine because that's so well thought of, and most of them stayed, practice in Duluth, in that area, Bemidji and other things. So it's an important part of Duluth and is impactful for the entire state. So I just wanted to kind of mention that. I did have a question also about just the College of Pharmacy. We're about 50 per class, something like that, do you know? And then I believe there are a lot of opportunities there for dual degrees, MBA with PharmD, MPH with the PharmD, Master of Health Informatics, some really nice options, and it seems that would set people up for good career options, either in academia or in practice. And just, think that's important part of UMD. It's a small part of the whole, but any comments or thoughts on either of those?
Chancellor McMillan.
Yeah, Chair Davenport, Regent Johnson, thanks for mentioning the medical school and the opportunity that I believe you're looking at here in terms of prioritizing legislative asks for a chance to put the Duluth campuses of the pharmacy and medical schools into the heart of the medical district, third largest in the state, after, of course, Mayo and here. And it's a huge advantage for the university, an opportunity to marry up the clinical research, clinical education side with what happens, and so we're working. I'm as interested in that as I was as a regent as I am as the chancellor, because it's good for Duluth and it's good for the university, and I hope there's a spoonful of public health opportunity in there too. There's other places where the university and Duluth and UMD could help leverage that. So thanks for mentioning it. I'm not as close to the pharmacy numbers, but you did pick up on several really nicely integrated programs there. Some degree opportunities like that MBA one I think is really good. So there's a couple others as well, but I would be remiss. We can get more info on how things are doing there, the pharmacy school can. And the 50th anniversary, I got to speak at that with Dean Tolar and our regional dean, Kevin, up there. So it was fascinating and really smart thinkers, some legislative leaders that said, let's do this 50 years ago. And today we get to celebrate the beauty of what they did. So was there a question in there I missed?
Just a comment. I just asked for some comments.
Yeah, okay. Thank you.
Programs. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you all for the good conversation. More to come. Thank you, Interim Chancellor McMillan. And so now we'll move on to our consent report. Provost Croson.
Thank you, Chair Davenport. I'm happy to present the consent report for your consideration with my and the President's recommendation for approval. I'd like to especially highlight the new Bachelor of Arts degree in Public Health. This is an exciting area of growth and opportunity, directly addressing student interest and workforce demand. While our top-ranked School of Public Health has been educating public health practitioners for more than 100 years, this is their first baccalaureate program. It will involve multiple disciplines that comprise different areas of public health. The School of Public Health currently offers an undergrad public health minor in collaboration with the College of Liberal Arts. Over its 9-year history, this minor has become the second largest minor degree program on the Twin Cities campus, with nearly 500 students enrolled in spring '22. This new Bachelor of Arts degree will provide yet another option for students who are called to this very important work. I'm happy to take any questions you may have on this item or anything else in the information report.
Thank you. Let's move first. Is there a motion to recommend approval of the consent report?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. The motion is approved. One last item, item 5, brings us the information items. Again, Provost Croson, what would you like to highlight? There's a lot of highlights there. I hope folks have reviewed that.
Thank you, Chair Davenport. Our regular activities report is included for your information. It seems fitting in light of Vice President Priya's presentation that the report lists several multi-million-dollar grants recently received by the university and our stellar researchers. We are also exceptionally proud to report that Regents Professor Stephen Ruggles was one of this year's MacArthur Genius Fellows. I actually knew Professor Ruggles from my time at the National Science Foundation, where he was a very well-known and well-respected PI and advisor to the agency, and I was delighted when I arrived here to find that he was here, and this is just a really wonderful recognition for him. We've also added to this information report a series of embedded links. So I hope that you enjoy reading the report and have the opportunity to follow some of those links to the data there. And before I conclude, I want to turn it over to President Gabel, who has one more informational item to share.
Thank you, Provost Croson. Chair Davenport, Vice Chair Johnson, and members of the committee. Adding to the lore of the most played football bowl subdivision rivalry in history dating back to 1890, on November 26th, the Gophers beat Wisconsin for the second consecutive season, representing the first time this has happened since the 1993-1994 season, or nearly 3 decades. So here today from Gopher football is tight end Brevin Spanford from St. Cloud and quarterback Tanner Morgan, who join us with Paul Bunyan's axe. Go Gophers.
Thank you, President Gable. It's fantastic to have the axe here, and we'll adjourn this meeting.